And welcome back, everybody, to the Mind Blossom. In this video, we're going to watch as I create a picture that I call individuation. I discovered the term individuation when I was researching Carl Jung. I started getting into that man's work, I want to say 2018, 2017 maybe, but pretty much like 2018, 2019. What does individuation mean? That may depend on who you ask. But if you ask me, my opinion is that individuation is the process of becoming who you really are. So then, who are you really? When I was even just a little bit younger, I really wanted to know who I was. I wanted to get to the bottom of who I was, beyond the name Frank, beyond the job that I had, beyond the roles that I played in society and with my family. Who was I really at the essence and at the core on a cosmic level and beyond? If I went inwards forever, what would I discover? That's a lot to ask for. Do you see how the answer to that question is not so much a final destination, but rather an ongoing process? Our identity, our true self, is revealed to us over time as we peel back the layers. When we peel back the layers of ourself, we realize that becoming who we are is, at least partially, about what we can let go of, rather than what we add on to ourselves. We have to let go of certain parts of our identity in order to have a more full picture of who you really are. For example, I'm not just a counselor. If Frank was really just a counselor, then I would be a counselor all day long when I'm at work, when I'm at home, when I'm with my friends, when I'm with my family. And in that way, I become a very one-dimensional person. A one-dimensional person does not have very much fun in life, nor are they very much fun to be around, nor do they learn very much. A one-dimensional person is ignorant. They have already discovered, or they believe they have discovered who they really are, and they have no more room for growth. They leave no more room for curiosity and for self-development. A one-dimensional person. A one-dimensional person is somebody who identifies with just one of the roles that they play in life. For many of us, this is our career. For many of us, it's being a family person, or being a friend, or being really good at a hobby. Many of us identify with our bodies of knowledge in one area or another. We identify with our skills. And so, these things should be appreciated, but we should also learn how to put them on the shelf so that way we can experience the other parts of who we are. Individuation, the process of a seed germinating and growing up out of the soil into the light, blossoming and bearing fruit, and having the seeds of that fruit spread so that the generations can pass on. In that way, a person is not just themselves, but they are the whole. They are the process, the living, breathing process of life, constantly in flux, always in a state of evolution. Evolution only grinds to a halt when we insist on keeping it bottled up so that we may generate the illusion of possessiveness. In other words, when we try to own life. The problem with trying to own life is that we already do own it. It's difficult to go on looking for what you already have. And yet, that is why we're here. Nothing I say should be outright believed. Every bit of information that you are exposed to or that you should consume, let it pass through you, and if it sticks, great. If it does not resonate with you, then let it phase out. And if it sticks with you, but then it hits its expiration date and you no longer find it useful, then let it die. This is how we should consume information, including everything I say to you now. Let your ideas and concepts change as they will. Generally, it's better to be flexible than rigid, but even that rule is not an absolute. And so, when we individuate, we become who we really are. In other words, we get into the groove of letting ourselves blossom over time. When this becomes our focus, we would do well to stay open-minded. What does that mean? Well, to me, it means realizing that I don't know everything and that the things that I do know are useful, but to an extent, and that in order to thrive and in order to find joy, I need to be accepting of all possibilities and open to change. I have to realize the limits of my control so that way I don't cling on to the things that are going to change whether I like it or not. When we become who we really are, we surrender to the process. We surrender to our development. And yet, we do still insist on keeping a North Star, a bright light that anchors us. It keeps us moving in a generally straightforward direction along the path of evolution towards our higher self. Your higher self is God. Your higher self is all that there is and all that there ever could or would be. And your seed is the soul, your spark from that vast beyond. And the soul stores information. It has come down to this plane of duality so that it can experience the amnesia of not realizing who it is. And in that way, it has to learn everything from scratch. In that way, it has to learn enough that it can return back home. Individuation is the process of returning home, your true home, which is yourself. When God breaks out of the amnesia and unites with itself once again. In this picture, I have a masculine side and I have the feminine side. The positive and negative polarities. The void will disintegrate and absorb everything that the light puts out. And thus it enables change. The light puts information into the cosmos. That information manifests on all of the realms and especially on the three-dimensional realm, where the spiritual information from the vast beyond takes a very dense form. Down here, the octaves of energy from the so-called above have reached a point where they are slower. The vibrations are slower, and so they appear to be solid. They become observable through our physical sensory apparatus. The positive and negative polarity, that which gives and that which takes. The void, the eternal feminine, the negative polarity. It destroys, it disintegrates, it sucks in the light. And the light is pushed ever outwards by the masculine positive principle. It exerts into the void, into the great chasm, the womb. And so they work perfectly together. The receptivity of the void womb allows for form to come and go. Form is not a static, eternal shape or concept. It comes and goes, it rises and falls, and it changes in between point A and point B. And all of us have the masculine and the feminine within. Recognize your passivity, or in other words, your receptiveness, your ability to surrender, and also recognize your ability to initiate. And recognize when it's time appropriate to use either one. The soul yearns to be aligned with its purpose. The soul was designed to interact with the physical plane in such a way that it would absorb very specific light code information sequences. The information that my soul is here to absorb is necessarily different than the information that your soul is here to absorb. And thus we have different personalities in different paths. And yet we end up at the same end result, which is enlightenment or union with the Creator. And so we see equifinality. There are many, many infinite paths, all leading to the same final goal. When we have absorbed enough information, we may return to those higher realms. Information is truly absorbed when we can use it to make real changes in our life. These real changes are reflected in our level of consciousness, our type of awareness, wisdom. How can you apply your knowledge in such a way that you grow, that your consciousness develops? What is the hallmark characteristic of an enlightened being? Is there just one, or are there many? The soul wishes to be put into action such that it is in the process of fulfilling its earth mission. A person will never experience joy unless they are on the path that they are supposed to be on. You will not maximize your joy until you get moving onto your destiny. The destiny which, by the way, you have already chosen, but you can't remember. You must begin and maintain the journey onto your destiny in order to find joy on a daily basis. Joy is found in bite-sized quantities all throughout the day, not necessarily in great, large sums all at once, at unexpected or expected times. It's an endless river of miracles, and we're flowing down that river. Miracles are not cheap, they're free. They're not rare, they're everywhere. And we may only begin to recognize and appreciate them once we are doing what we are supposed to do. Otherwise, we're swimming upstream. An individuated person will find peace and joy in that they become comfortable with letting other people be who they are. In other words, the individuated person feels little to no need to control the lives of other people. People who wish to micromanage another person's destiny are not in control of their own destiny, or perhaps they may not even be aware of their own destiny. For if they were, they would no longer feel the need to direct another person's life. They would see how futile it is, what a waste of time and energy it is, because we can really only control what we do. The individuated person knows that everyone must stumble through their own obstacles and engage in their own folly. To be a fool is a birthright. It is a prerequisite to becoming wise. Let the person persist in their folly for as long as they need to. This does not mean that you have to entertain or owe anything to the fool. You don't owe anybody anything, and nobody owes you anything. It's up to you Your foolishness and how long you persist, how long you decide to be the fool is up to you. The wise, individuated person has an allowance for internal foolishness because they can control it. A controlled folly. The realization that on this earth things are falling apart. We are built, our matrix is constructed upon a bedrock of eternal chaos. And so therefore everything is necessarily falling apart before our very eyes. Much of it lies outside of our grasp, and it slips through our fingers like water. Juggle it, dance through it, and in that way, you make yourself invincible to the negative effects of chaos. There is power in surrender. It's easier to become consumed by chaos than it is to align yourself with the light. In order to align yourself with the information of truth and light, you must get on that vibration. You can only enter the kingdom of heaven if your vibration matches that of the kingdom. And you know what that vibration is. You know it internally. Your words fail to describe it, but you do know what it is. Paradise. The paradise frequency. How can you get there? You cannot get there if you cling to the lower density frequencies. They say we are in the earth, but not of it. We are in the world, but not of it. We're participating, but we are more than low vibrational, dense matter. We're here participating in it, but it is not the complete definition of our identity. Our identity includes much more. This is just a small fraction of it. Better to not be too serious about what goes on down here. Sincerity is always more important than seriousness. The individuated person finds more joy in serving. The ego wishes to receive, but the soul wishes to give. The soul builds its reservoir of information. It adds to the records of its own Akashic collection by serving the world, by leaving its golden cosmic fingerprint on the lives of others. In other words, we give in order to receive. We give our gifts and our time and our efforts. We give the light of our soul. And in return, we receive abundance and vitalization from the universe. Everything we receive is a miracle. But sometimes we don't recognize miracles because they are hidden in everyday, plain actions. In other words, we take them for granted. Ask yourself, how will you now shed your skin such that you give yourself permission to set foot into the promised land? Will you look for the promised land without, or will you journey inward? Once you go inward, you will begin to discover that the promised land will slowly reflect upon the external forms of reality that you encounter. As within, so without. Modify your soul with light. You can absorb light on a daily basis by engaging in the right thoughts, by concentrating on the right things, and by paying attention to the voice of your soul and following its instructions. It is here to guide you along a trajectory. And upon following this trajectory with sincerity and genuine enthusiasm and curiosity, you will absorb a little more light, a little more at a time, until you begin to discover that you are in the process of receiving light always, because your life is a streamlined journey into the soul. Will you let the light of your internal heaven shine upon the world around you? You must first have the courage to discover it for yourself. You must have the courage to surrender all those parts of you that no longer align with your newest definition of paradise. The light of paradise is perfect, but it will incinerate everything that does not belong. Until you realize that the only thing that does belong is love. That is the light. Beyond all measurements and descriptions, there is only love, the perfect light. Discard yourself and step into this light. This is the light that we all share. I see it reflected back at myself when I meet you. How much courage do you have? Do you have courage enough to see your light in the eyes of every stranger you meet? How open is your heart? Open enough that you can see with it? Unleash the endless flow of blessings by accepting and embarking upon your destiny. Ask yourself, what are you capable of giving? What can you give that nobody else can? Make yourself open to receive. Give in order to receive, and receive in order to give. Let all of it flow through you in a circular way. Do not have so much pride that you are unable to receive, because then you will not be able to give in a genuine way. Let the universe take care of you. Accept its blessings. Accept the love that it gives you in all of its forms, because it will surprise you at times with the forms that it chooses to take. The only nemesis you have is within. And just like your light, your nemesis is equally reflected upon the external forms that you encounter every single day. Fear not the nemesis, but rather recognize it and reel it back in, such that it too becomes a part of your total integrated self. In what ways are you your own worst enemy? In what are the lessons that your nemesis has to teach you by means of confrontation, directly facing it, and, above all, showing it love? You cannot love your nemesis. You cannot love the hardest, most rough parts of yourself unless you begin to show those parts acceptance, empathize with the wounds that you have chosen to bear by coming to this world. Empathy and not sympathy will heal these internal wounds. Become more invested in the person who you are spiritually rather than the person who you are physically. And yet, along this process of engendering an increased spiritual element, never lose track of the earth. Keep your feet planted on earth while you reach for the stars. There is great consequence to people who become so spiritually high that they become dysfunctional on the planet. You can get lost in the spirit if you reach for secrets too soon. A foundation on the earth is vital to spiritual exploration. They say that spirit is a volatile form of matter, and matter is a crystallized form of spirit. Two ends of the same spectrum. The earth and its physical, dense components are just as much spiritual as the gods on high, but they take different forms. The highest of all frequencies would not be so lofty and free were it not for the dense inertia of the earthly plane. And so the vast beyond requires the mundane physical routine in order to maintain its magnificence. Be of the earth while you reach for the stars, my friends. Find joy in everyday life. And until next time, everybody, peace out.